Hello, everyone. It's Mike Merker here with People Solving Impossible Puzzles. And I'm joined by Diane here. And this is episode 45. And Diane, tell us all about yourself.
Uh, Great. Thank you so much, Mike. I'm Diane Devenyi. I used to call myself a recovering tax lawyer. Now I just say that was my history. But almost 30 years ago, I realized that my passion is educational reform. And because I had three young children at the time, and I was looking at what was happening for them, for others, and I thought there's something missing here, and I was curious about how I could do something to shift it. And I discovered that the way we teach literacy has actually been activating only part of the brain.
Yes! Oh my God, say it. Tell the whole story. Tell the whole story. I love it. I love it.
So, literacy has been around for thousands of years, and there was actually an amazing book written by Leonard Schlein, who is a vascular surgeon who is fascinated by how the brain works. And he wrote a book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess. And he traced how when literacy showed up in a culture, it would shift away from being like, kind of goddess loving, creative, art appreciating, and loving of nature and Mother Earth. It would shift to more structured, sequential, and scientifically minded ways of thinking that have created basically the world we have today, where we can be polarized. There's an us and a them. We don't realize that we're all connected. And so he published this book in 1998. So he was
Yes.
curious, and unfortunately, he passed away, ironically, from a brain tumor in 2008. But he got to see the beginning of the internet, and he had great hopes that something was going to bring us back together in a way that literacy had separated us. And he traced in every culture how this is the way they were, and then they went this way. And I finished the book thinking it's not literacy in and of itself. It's actually how we teach the symbols for literacy, because that's the original establishment of how the brain starts wiring for learning in a new way. You've had all this oral experience up until you start becoming literate, and as a child, you have everything available to you. Your imagination, your intuition, your sense
Yes.
of
Yes.
like, just everything being a part of you, and you are in it, and anything is possible. And we go from that into teaching literacy and structure and saying, okay, this is the way that you're going to learn now how to read and write. But it's
So
that.
interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And diving into this, the the symbols of language, for example, the ABC alphabet, that's just one of many systems. Those are just the ABC letters. That is not the Chinese characters. That is not the Korean Hangul. That is not the Hebrew alphabet. That is not the Cyrillic Russian alphabet. That is not Greek. That is not the language systems of India. That is not Arabic. That's just one system. That's just the dominant, let's call it, could we say the Latin or Roman symbols originally? That's just the dominant Western symbols that are dominant in parts of the world. Yeah, but if we were both to pick ourselves out of Toronto, Canada and end up in China, we would still see some of those symbols, but they would not be the dominant symbols.
That's so true. And it's interesting that you mention all these different systems because another Torontonian wrote a book called The Alphabet Effect. And he traces how the type of symbols you use actually contribute to how the brain is wired and how you see the world. And he talks about the fact that the Chinese characters have a visceral component to them because they represent concepts and bring in a more concrete sense of the symbols themselves. And so that activates different ways of, like, and he said it will influence the politics, the religion, the art, like everything is influenced by the symbols that you use.
The writing systems outside of being, or alphabet systems or writing systems outside of being just a way to represent language and writing, are themselves a world unto themselves in the field of linguistics. We're talking about the science of language, and it's funny, as you say this, I'm literally like on my desk, as I know are around you, on my desk, I'm like, okay, here's like images. This is from a Light Bright system where it's like ice cream, but the ice cream is depicted as like, it's to be depicted as light. There is no symbols, it's just colors and shapes. And then in a similar way, I have like, I'm surrounded for myself, like all sorts of Lego-like or block-based things. And at the same time, like instead of writing the word pizza, oops, I have like a 3D printable, that one fell apart, but like objects. And you're also, and I'm cheating, as before we started, you were showing you have all sorts of objects, and even more philosophically speaking, you felt that it's not enough just to have a two people talking, wiggling their wagging their mouths and vocal cords. You wanted to show something, and you felt that was so important for the podcast. Why is it so important to have physical objects or tactile things?
Well, it's first of all because we are living in this amazing three-dimensional world, but we've been training our brains to live still relatively two-dimensionally, and we're not. And the other thing is, I mean, and we've also, the amazing thing is, in past 25 years, we're starting to realize neuroplasticity is a thing, as long as you are alive, and secondly, we have a system in our body that used to be seen as just kind of a filler that's called the fascia. And it's like a wetsuit underneath all of our skin that is a tubule-based communication system. And we aren't activating it or appreciating it for the value that it has for being a more complete human. Like really having the sensations, and activating your intuition, your imagination, all of those things that we begin with as children, we lose as we start to become more and more literate in the way that we're teaching. But it's not necessary that that's the only way it happens. As I was shown.
Yes, please, to share. Yes.
Here's an example. The letter A. This is an A that I made by myself. I rolled the clay. I figured out how big the ropes needed to be to assemble a clay, that each letter. And I'll show you, if I can just pick up my laptop.
Please
bring
show
it
us.
around and see if you can see the entire alphabet.
Yes, I see.
I'm not very good at aiming it there. And you can see that it starts at Z and goes to A, just for fun, to keep growing the way the brain works. Because the thing is, we are basically renting someone else's alphabet when we are learning to read and write. But there's something about ownership. When you own this letter and you've made it in a way so that you understand that one way it's a B, the other way it's a D, the other way it's a Q, the other way it's a P, and you start to see patterns, and but it becomes yours when people make their own letters. And I'm talking about children and adults. My oldest student so far was 77. Um, you are rewiring your brain to be completely activated.
Yes,
You
the
are,
fullness, and just jumping in there, the fullness of the brain, I'm literally thinking about that day or two every year. I have my daughter is 4 years old, and it's so interesting when it's like in school, what do you learn in kindergarten? And how do you learn, right? It is not books. It is not homework. It is all art and clay and rituals and play and the learning. Now one can look on and be like, it's just nursery, it's just kindergarten. You're not really learning anything. But the reality is you are learning things. You're learning with your hands. You're learning with your eyes. It's not all sit, student, be quiet, teacher, talk, 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 books, books, books. It's color. Every layer of the classroom is colorful, and that's what you are advocating for. That adults, we don't. Adults are also kids. We're all kids.
right. Well, and the traditional school system teaches us to memorize, to recognize patterns, to look at sequence, like all the things. And those are the students who are the most celebrated in our system, the ones who do that well. But what has recently appeared that can replace all of those skills in seconds? AI.
AI moves the human skill set. This AI boom, this AI gold rush, if you will, it's changing so quickly. The idea of what we learned in school, the way we learned, what we were taught, a lot of that isn't the crux of the matter anymore. It's not
Exactly.
needed.
But
Yes.
this is what's been celebrated and promoted is all of the things that AI can do. So when you're talking about what your daughter is learning in kindergarten, she's actually learning the skills that AI cannot replace.
And AI is AI can do writing, it can do reading, it can do summaries, it can do math. Uh, it cannot do art, or
Exactly. It cannot create. It can do
it can
art
do art, I guess.
by combining previous things, but it cannot create something from nothing.
It can only rework what's already been done, and everything is algorithms and systems and readjusting and basing things off other existing things. That's right. And there's this huge new almost change, like the inventing of fire, the discovery of fire, or the inventing of railroads, or anything, computers, the early computers. So you're feeling a you're feeling and sensing a sort of massive tectonic shift in the priorities of education. You know it. You're feeling it. You know it. You're going with that.
That's
Maybe
right.
against the grain. Against the grain. People are calling you, "Oh, Diane, what are you talking about? Why do we need to have physical objects of everything around us?" I'm on the same boat. Well, what do you say to the naysayers? How do you defend your honor?
Well, I ask them, do you want your children to be educated to be replaced by AI or learn to leverage AI? Because what they're being
Yes.
taught now is basically replaceable. But it's also and it's moving so quickly, so much faster than anything in human history. But think about the Industrial Revolution. When it came, there was all this hand wringing about people not having opportunities for physical labor anymore. Like the jobs that required physical labor were being replaced by machines.
Yeah, what do I do if my only if my father and my father's father, all we did was make baskets by hand? What is our future? Well, we have no future in the making it with our hands anymore. What are we to do with ourselves? How will
But
we eat?
right,
Yeah.
but what it did is freed us from physical labor so that we were able to then move into the information age and continue evolving the human expression. So, looking at what we have now, we no longer have to learn tedious computation and knowing which theory to apply and memorizing facts. We don't need to do that anymore. We are now liberated to have an opportunity for more self awareness, self mastery, and unique self expression. This is what we have the opportunity we're moving into. But you want to prepare your brain and body to be the system that can exercise that new opportunity. And
Amazing. Amazing. And at the level of, to all those children right now, as it is 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, all those, and whatever time it would be in England and China and Bangkok and California and Switzerland, everyone, all these children who are going to school, what about the shift in the massive tectonic shift of society? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the on today versus tomorrow?
so we know how it's very human to resist change
Mm,
because change is uncertainty. And if you've survived up until this point doing what you're doing, then you should continue doing what you've been doing. But nature evolves, and we are nature. We evolve. And so I understand the resistance to change. And I'm saying let's let's get there instead of resisting anymore. Let's start doing it and start being curious. I'll tell you one thing that I found really interesting along the way. I returned to school to earn a master's degree in education. I trained with various people who had ways of looking at and who also gave me the concept of making letters out of clay. And I took that to new approaches. But I also certified as a yoga instructor because I wanted to
yes.
have more connection to the mind, body, spirit. What is that?
Mind, body, spirit. Yes. Give the sermon. Tell the story. The mind, body, spirit is. What does that mean to you? To our, so to speak, generally atheistic, generally non-spiritual, generally who gives a crap, TV watching, modernism.
But that's also it's easy to be separated from your spirit when you're not educated, but also when your brain wiring preparation of learning the alphabet gave you that inclination. But look at, so
Yes.
there's a couple of things that I found really interesting, and I'm still
Yes.
just playing with it. One is when I was doing my yoga training, we were told that as a human, our lower vertebrae are fused. And so we have 26 distinct vertebrae. 26?
26.
Same number of letters in the English alphabet. That's interesting. And then we were taught, because we did a lot of anatomy, we were taught that each foot has 26 bones.
You're saying
26.
the
So
construction of the body itself has wondrous properties and particularly calculated and particularly interesting, as if crafted. Uh
So
oh.
you know this, what 26 is in Gematria is Yahweh.
Oh, you've studied gematria and yoga and the Montessori method. and you have a master's in education, and you have a broad, diverse background. And you worked as a lawyer,
Right.
and
And sometimes I think that's what set me, like, who better to take on the challenge of revamping education than someone who's not tied into it in the way that we all get sucked into whatever paradigm, we
let's
start working in.
yeah, just trying to unpack, going deeper into that. Do you feel that you're almost, are you saying that, are you talking more about kids like in like grade 1, or are you focusing more on, let's say, like university students, or are you thinking more about like people, like I'm 42 years old? Are you talking more about a guy like me who has a lot of, I don't know, computer training, and who is it particularly that is captivating your new educational approaches and methods that you're implementing?
Well, just as you've said, it's generational. I actually am focusing on families. Because
Families, parent and child, mother and daughter.
grandparents, I also have taught grandparents with the family
You're
because
generational.
generally
Okay.
so one of my favorite quotes I encountered when I was doing my master's program was from Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. They will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Oh, let me say that again. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn,
Unlearn.
unlearn, and relearn. What does it mean? What does it mean to unlearn? What is that? How would you define that?
What? So one example of unlearning is whatever you believe you know about the alphabet, we're going to completely rewire you. You are going to unlearn what you think that by singing the alphabet song, you know it. You don't know it. If you don't know it forwards and backwards, and if you cannot tell me what's 2 letters before and after any letter I call out, you don't know it. You think you do. So I'm saying unlearn your belief that you have learned everything you need to learn about this amazing technology that is somehow, this specific alphabet is somehow tied to our human frequency.
We should be learning. That's actually extremely interesting. I'm literally talking to people from different, just at this point in my life, and now I'm like, oh wow, I've never been to India, but that friend of mine who I grew up with, Jeff, who lived in India for 2 years, he came back like a completely different person. And this journalist I spoke to from Nova Scotia, she had such completely different ideas about things. And I was like, what about this? She goes, well, Michael, if you live in Japan for 15 years as an adult, and then you come back to Canada. Another person, a filmmaker, and who worked in venture capital, and he lived in, and he's Vietnamese. But he's like, well, my family's Vietnamese Americans, but so I'm an American. But he lived in Vietnam for 5 years. So when he came back, his whole world was different, and it's not necessary. And this is not going to another city in to Canada, or flying to vacation in Florida for a week. He's talking about like like living for years in another continent, which has completely different everything. Even the alphabet symbols are different. Not just is the weather different, and not just is the food different. You're talking everything, and and by talking to people of different cultures and hearing their perspectives, it actually becomes obvious that if you live in the same place for a while, you get used to living in the same place. So you think whatever you do is normal. And if you're Canadian, of course, you break your leg, you drive to the hospital. Of course, it's free. But Well, that's a different topic. But if you travel, or if you learn about different cultures, or you talk to people from different experiences, and you open your mind to it, then it opens up different ways of thinking and different ways of. It's completely different, and you have a worldliness. You have
Well,
traveled extensively.
I've done some travel, but I'll tell you how I really gained an understanding of what different cultures and how different cultures see the world. It was when I decided, because for 20 years I called my program Fearless Mastery. And I decided I had to take on something I'd been afraid to do my whole life, which was learn how to partner dance. And I started with Latin music. And so, and Toronto is this amazing place where there's so many styles of dance available to be learned because we're so cosmopolitan. And and I started meeting a lot of people from South America. And I had lived, grown up in Toronto, spent a year in Milwaukee for a training thing. But other than that, Toronto was my home. And I suddenly understood that people around the world have completely different views about what family means,
Yeah.
what they value, like and just how they want to lead their lives, and and the joy that comes from being completely activated in your mind, body, and spirit through dance. And so I started thinking, oh my gosh, like I have so much to learn.
Yes.
I didn't travel and spend time in places enough to know this from that perspective, but through the people that have become my friends over the years in dance and learning how they see the world, and just appreciating true diversity, it has been an incredible experience. But I want to just quickly go back to the other
Please.
question of what do you say to people?
Please, going back to that, yeah. What do you say? Diane is going to share with us, for context. How do you respond when someone challenges your unique approach to education and and spirituality? Yeah, how do you respond? Oh, share.
Well, one other interesting um, dynamic that's happening in schools is the percentage of children who learn differently, who will not conform to the methods that have been presented for well over 100 years, and
Mm,
we label them, and we call
that's right.
them
We say they're bad.
right,
It's
and and
negative.
we've got the label of autism, and we're looking at that and saying, oh, so but and the percentages of students who are showing up with what they call the symptoms of 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 being, wired in a specific way, or being super
Yes.
sensitive in certain ways, and saying, well, is this not what humanity, like, there was a time when I thought, if I was in charge of the world, what would I do to give people give humans an opportunity to evolve and truly appreciate diversity? You would send a whole bunch of children who are different, and they are backed by mothers and fathers who are standing up for their children and saying, you cannot discard my child. My child.
Discard. It's not just. The language is so serious. Like disability,
Exactly.
bad. Disability. You do not have the ability to do what we need you to do. Disability, disadvantage. It's so wild you're saying that. Friends or acquaintances, some of the most incredible software I've seen, some of the most incredible technologists I've met, some 10, 20 years older than me. The first thing they say is that before we start, I just want to acknowledge that I have dyslexia and I've had it all my life, or ADD, or obvious Asperger's or autism. They actually say that. I'm like, but you did all these 100 things. He goes, no, I've been thrown out of school 10 times. I was violent. I couldn't deal with. I could never read. And I'm like, but yeah, but 60 years ago, 50 years ago, there wasn't even the discussion about it. Wasn't kosher. It wasn't socially acceptable to talk about this. Why couldn't we even talk? Why was this not talked about?
Well, first of all, we have just gone through a like a period of time of great scientific innovation, and
Mm.
so we are all of us had our brains wired to not be open to accepting diversity as a positive thing, because diversity means there are new organisms that you don't have boxes for, you don't have patterns, it feels unsafe, and so it's natural to want to discard things that feel like an anomaly. But
It's natural to want to discard things that feel like an anomaly because it is difficult to
yeah,
run to have a same school building that hasn't changed, and classroom sizes and shapes that haven't changed, and textbooks that have been the same, practically the same for 30 years, 50 years. It's for education, for like a public school, junior high, or elementary school. It's hard to change. It's scary. It's scary. It's actually
scary.
scary. It's
And, and
scary.
and yeah, when we don't make patterns, that triggers a fear response. And it also shuts down when we have fear, it shuts down our prefrontal cortex and ability to do new things. But again, I go back to, how did we teach the alphabet? We That's the first technology that we installed to provide the lens through which the individual would experience new things, learning, and be determined to find ways to put it into specific boxes. But if we activate the entire human operating system, the entire brain, guess who would not have dyslexia? Everybody who has the label of dyslexia, because they are being taught, when their brain, the creative, the artistic, the athletic, the scientific, the entrepreneurial, their brain is wired to um, thrive in a different system than the one that they were placed in.
And placed in, and it's just become a norm in society that every parent sends their kids to school, and there are different types of schools, but there's a general framework of kids go to school, and everyone is in their same age. It's by grade, and you go, 9 to 3 or 8 to 4 or whatever the system is, and that's what it is. And every kid has to go to school. Not every culture operates. That's a new thing. That's only been around maybe a couple 100 years. There was probably a time where there must
Not
have been,
even 100. Yeah,
not
not,
even. um,
yeah.
what else is going on in making, just as you showed, each letter individually crafted out of clay, which is a delicate, with your hands, making, doing clay. Why clay? Why are you such a lover of potteries and of the
Well,
making of?
modeling clay. So this does not harden. So it's
Okay.
practical. So you can squish it up and do other things with it. And the alphabet is just the beginning of the communication system. You start to understand the genesis of words, and you can, like, the way you learn how to spell. The way we do the alphabet is forward and backwards. So you imprinted it so that you're activating your ability. The majority of people can see in their mind's eye. Some can sense. They cannot see. They say it's all black, but they can sense. And so what we want is everybody's ability. And those who are the most creative have a stronger natural inclination toward visualization and intuition, all of those things. But it's dismissed as not being the way to learn. And so that then, because they don't fit in and their wiring isn't adjusting to the system, they get the labels and they walk around telling you in their 50s and 60s, I'm dyslexic.
That's right. It's a label. Why? What's going on in your life? Oh, I'm ADHD, and that's why I cannot succeed. But it
So,
should be the other way around.
well, what if the way we taught was favoring those who have all of those things, and those who come, that are the ones who are commonly the ones who are the most successful in education, they were the ones getting the labels.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I have to share. Sorry to interrupt you there. I know personally, and I've said this to everyone I know. I know personally like 50 teachers, rabbis, people in like education research, people in like education technology, literally. Now, and they've all, at the odd, drunk and they said the wrong thing, or a rabbi, you catch him in the corner and he's furious. All these unnamed 50 people who I've collected, they all are like, oh man, they're like, Mike, something's off, or do you know how hard it is to teach in the year 2026, or do you know how hard it is to like wake up in the morning and like come and as a rabbi try to teach the same like old books to the same in the same old structure. It is not working at all. And I'm
And
like, okay,
keep,
I hear you, brother. I hear you. I have added you to the list of
yeah, and
and
but they keep getting up and doing it over and over again, to to the detriment of their mental and physical health.
no, yeah, and this is why it's so important to vocalize this. Is that many times I said, how come you don't say this? And they're like, well, I'm telling you, I'm
Right.
telling you. And a lot of it, when you really get to I mean, there's obviously a financial layer here. There's also a communal pressure layer. There's also I'm like, did you even tell your wife? And they're like, I can't. This is like real life. So I'm like, you have to communicate this to other people. They're like, no, this is my job. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a rabbi. I've been teaching grade 4 or grade 6 or grade 8 or running a synagogue. This is all I know. This is what I do. What am I going to do? Call the police? I'm like, no, you need to call the, Ghostbusters. This is you have a problem here that's larger than, I literally, I'm obviously, it was humorous, but I'm like, you need to call the Batman. This is like a super, this is like sometimes you have a problem that's so so like philosophically complicated, so huge that you cannot, there's no one to call. The only person that can be called is the self, is everyone together.
And this is
And
why I begin with the family, because I realize the
yes,
system has so many layers of complexity. Like, we could talk for hours about all the difficulties. And that's why I said, you know what? It's going to be a grassroots movement. I'm going to start family by family by family and giving them experiences, and then they will go and tell other people, and it will grow and grow. Last year, I worked with a family, the 19-year-old who was starting at George Brown College had to do the literacy placement assessment to make sure they were going to be successful in reading and writing the material for the program, which is a great idea. But this person failed the written part.
of course.
Just
Of
listen,
course.
the mom is a teacher with 28 years, now 29 years of experience as an elementary school teacher. And she said to me, I have been taught everything they teach us about reading and writing, and I could not help my own child.
Deep.
So
I could
we
not
got
help my
together,
own child.
and
Yeah.
5 days before writing the retest, and if that test was failed again, they wouldn't be able to register for their courses. So we had 5 days to get this 19-year-old into shape.
You had 5 days. He's 19 years old, and you had 5 days.
So
This is the nature of the
program.
complexity. Yeah.
So the mom's the teacher, the dad works for the Ontario government. The 22-year-old sister is an engineer from engineering science at University of Toronto. They joined. I work with the entire family. They all make their alphabets. They all unlearn and relearn together. And
Together. Ooh, let's get into this. That's one key interesting thing. Together as a family. Learning at home, as the home environment, is a different scenario than the school environment. How you are saying that the home is a good place to relearn and unlearn? Why?
It doesn't have to be at the home. It can be with a group of people. In fact, this summer in Collingwood, I'm offering 2 family camp weeks, one in July and one in August, for parents and children. And it's not just little children. Often it's teenagers. It can be those in university and college, who are going to come together and learn how to unlearn and relearn their way of being together, what learning means to them as a family, and how they are going to be prepared and resilient for the future. So we are going to be doing that. And the problem is, when somebody gets a label, they are sent off somewhere to be fixed.
That's right. That's right, because there's something wrong. That's a problem to be solved.
But I can tell you, I also recently worked with a family, and I do this work virtually as well.
Yes.
The family gets the materials and they do it all, but we go through everything virtually. And I worked with a family in Seattle. Both parents were physicians. Their 11-year-old son had been working with a specific type of dyslexia program for 2 years, and the person who was providing that training found out about what I did and said, I have a feeling that you have something that I don't have for this particular child. I said, well, as long as the parents will do it, then I'll work with them. And they organized their schedule so that they could be students with their son, who had been used to being the one that had to be fixed. And when he got to see them learning and having questions and even have an opportunity to review their new printed alphabet, how were they doing? That just changed everything for this boy. He suddenly was capable in ways that he had never been able to draw from before, because his parents had shown it's not just about him learning. We are all lifelong learners, and we all always have, even if we look like we're successful, busy doctors, we are here to learn together for life. And
everyone needs, just echoing the thought there, is that I love how you're focusing so extensively on the, like, learning with your hands. Things are physical objects. Those are all my favorite things also. And it's not so easy. Once you label a child as different, that child is forever labeled as different. They are forever like a leper. It's like an outcast. Now, and they have to accept. They would have to. That's a real thing. You can't pretend that it hasn't happened. You can't tell a 6-year-old that he's different and disabled, and then hope that a year later he's not going to realize that fact.
But if you rewire the brain in 2 days, which is when people start, like, that's when people start going, oh my gosh, I know the alphabet forward and backwards. I've like they've made their upper and lowercase alphabets. They've got all kinds of things that are completely rewriting their story, and their ego can't even get involved because it happens so quickly that it's right, the proof is right in front of them. Their handwriting has dramatically changed.
The proof, the if someone, that's right, yeah. When anyone asks what's the objective here, or what's the goal, or why are you doing something different, the answer is, look at the proof. The proof is the most immediate thing. Now the writing is 20% better. Now the reading comprehension is much clearer. We have gone back to the we have found the source. We have diagnosed a problem, and now we have we have found the symptoms. We have cured the problem. The problem is there isn't the
we're just rewiring.
rewiring.
Imagine, like, even for adults who have felt successful and have been successful because, you know, they could have creative parts, but they've definitely mastered the parts that are rewarded in our traditional school systems. And imagine when their brain, like, I remember this teacher telling me, you know, after the first night. So, and we'd only spent, I think, maybe that day we'd spent 5 hours together, and she said that evening everyone was like, because they all could feel that something was happening. Their brain was waking up in places that they hadn't experienced before. Like, everybody who's been functioning successfully, you know, in a sequential, systematic way, when things are opening up, they just kind of go, whoa, like, there's something happening here.
You know what? It's so interesting, and I'm adding a different angle to this beautiful discussion, Diane. Is I'm thinking also here about, like, in different religions. I mean, I've obviously the most experience in, like, Jewish religion or religious teachings, and the ideas, the books, the systems of learning are really old school. They're really old, and they're very strong traditionally. But yet, if you ask anyone who's any guy with one of these, or a married woman with a wig, they will tell you, yeah, isn't it interesting that, like, 90% of, like, Jewish people cannot even write their name with the Hebrew letters. Like, they don't even know where to begin. And I'm like, yeah, haven't we? Isn't that interesting that, like, not unless you, like, studied it, it's just so hard, right? And that's just writing your name. Never mind, like, and then yet, strangely, every, like, 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy and girl is to, like, it's sort of a cultural demand that they, like, read. You know, that's going on for years. And then I wonder also, like, it's not just the learning of the ABCs and progressing in history and in English class, or in maybe, you know, learning, like, reading and reading comprehension and writing and history, and you know, scientific research or whatever, science. But there's other languages in the world. You know, we're not all American, and demanding everyone speaks English. There's, like, thousands of completely different languages and cultures, and yet the dominance of, like, the choosing the I'm even trying to find the words here. It's like there are, when you have a dominant culture, like, this is how a school should be, or this is the language of the time, and these are, like, the popular culture of the time and the music of the time. That's just today. You talk to someone, I was talking to, like, a French guy, and he's like, there was a time where French was the language of the earth, and the French people were dominant. And then if you talk to, like, a German person, they'll be like, Michael, you got to go way back to the German poets and the German philosophers of the German, and painters and artists and Beethoven. And I'm like, Beethoven? He goes, yeah, he was like, that was a time and place of dominance of German arts and culture. And then, but completely different if you talk to someone who's Korean. They're like, "Oh, Korea, my my language is the best. My alphabet's better than yours." So everyone likes their own culture, but when you go to school in Canada, you're not learning. You're not learning Korean. You're not learning Hebrew in public school. We always learn what is. We learn. I'm even constructing this thesis as we talk. I guess everywhere in the world, you learn your language. If you're in Japan, you learn Japanese language, Japanese history, Japanese culture, Japanese alphabet, Japanese poetry, Japanese methods of teaching. You're going through that culture as a child. Maybe we are missing out on some of like the best possibilities just because, as you've described, it's like we're looking through like a little toilet paper roll at the world and we're only seeing like just one slice.
But you see, I'm not advocating that we take over the world with the English alphabet. What I'm saying is those who have an opportunity to learn English literacy for whatever reason,
Okay.
I want them to learn it in a way that engages the entire brain, the entire human operating system, so that they are prepared to learn, unlearn, and relearn from a place of empathy and courage and resilience for life.
Empathy and courage and resilience and learning with the heart and the hands, not just with this thing up here.
Exactly.
The hands. And what else? What else happens when you make and you mold and you it's fun. It's relaxing. It's art.
That's your thing. And so part of the yoga training, and so the you may be familiar with yoga that there are what they call mudras, like hand positions. And in fact, this, which is a typical religious mudra, like hand position, or for crossing oneself. This is actually called the golden triangle for creating miracles. All the mudras are connected to the meridian lines of the body from Chinese acupuncture. Like the understanding that there are energetic lines going through the body connecting our organs and systems, and some end up in our toes, some in our fingers, some stay within the body. But the mudras, so this represents the lungs, the large intestine, the pericardium, area around the heart, what they call the triple warmer, a number of systems in the digestive system, and the heart and the small intestine. So when you combine these things, like this is the heart. What am I doing?
Take your time, yoga master.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, how do I do that?
Interesting.
And then this one is called the silver triangle, which is for self-healing. So you're looking at your triple warmer, your lungs, your respiratory system, your heart, and your small intestine. So these are connecting. And so when you're using your hands, you're actually activating all of these systems, like just bringing movement of energy through your entire body, which maintains a good flow of energy. And when we're not using our hands, everything is in here, the entire system goes stagnant.
I forgot you've studied in depth and practicing and studying yoga, and yoga is knowing about it. Yoga's really the simplicity, or not the simplicity. It's just motion to acquire peace of clarity and peace of mind through body positions and but behind it, it's so much more than that, and its beauty is in its simplicity. And should everyone always be doing yoga?
Well, yoga means union, which is the union of the mind, body, and spirit. And different yogic traditions focus on different things. Some do a lot of spirituality, some do a lot of introspection and meditation and breath work, some do a lot of hand movements. The yoga that I decided to be trained in is called Naam, Naam,
I'm
which
looking it
means
up right now, so I'm not completely ignorant.
it means
Nam yoga, yeah.
it means the word. And so we do a lot of chanting, we do a lot of movements, breath work, like you do things. And what I love most about it is as people are doing things, I'm telling them what systems we're activating in the specific action that we're doing so that your intention starts infusing the benefits that you're receiving.
This is a different. I'm just reading about this. Nam yoga is a dynamic, healing focused yoga and meditation system. It blends Eastern yogic traditions with Western mysticism and universal Kabbalah by combining healing sound currents, mantras in brackets, breath work, dynamic physical movement, and mudras. As you said, the gestures. That's so interesting. I was reading an article yesterday, connecting all the dots here. In the traditional saying of like, well, communication is like 80% non-verbal. And I was reading that and I was like, non-verbal, non-verbal. What does that even mean? And it was so lengthy, but it talked in structure. It's like, well, how is the body positioned?
Mm.
How are
Are
you
you like
leaning?
this or are
Yeah,
you like that? You
and
know,
how are we?
hands.
I didn't even think about it. I guess I'm starting. Well, now I'm thinking about it. But like, it's like when you talk, is a person, pointing at someone? Are we positioning ourselves with like extensive authority? And at the same time, I don't, talking to all these journalists or friends of mine or acquaintances, they're all like, Mike, remember, you have to. I watched an episode and like, you have to remember, you must be genuine. You can't one day be like this and then another day like this. No, you have to be yourself. That's what a podcast is, or that's what an interview is. And now I'm connecting the dots. That this is not a new research by Yale University. This is Eastern. This is Eastern. There's more to this than meets the eye. And a decade. You've spent a decade as a yoga instructor, and how has that been? I've never met a yoga instructor before. I'm so curious.
I I mostly did it to understand because I had been a yoga student since the year 2000. That's when a number of things kept saying to me, you should be doing yoga. You should. Okay. So I started doing yoga and I really, really liked it. I experienced different types like Ashtanga, Iyengar, and Anusara, dabble a little bit in Kundalini. So these are like some very physical and some very spiritual. And then a person introduced me to Nam Yoga, and I happened to be in LA where they are based, and I went to a class, and as they were explaining, every time you're doing this, your lymphatic system is getting a pump because our lymphatic system needs massage or movement for it to work. It's not like our heart that pumps. It's not like our respiratory system. We need to move for our lymphatic system. So doing this, the lymph glands in your pits is actually giving you a pump so that you're eliminating the toxins from your body when you do this. And you can do it in a number of ways, but that specifically, and so, or that, okay, let's just work on the electromagnetic field of the heart. Just imagine that heart is charging up and you're just charging up the field. And by the way, the electromagnetic field of the heart is far greater than the one of the brain, and it contains a number of neurons that are exactly like the ones that are in the brain. And there are studies that show that the heart actually knows before the brain receives information from your senses. They've done studies to show that the heart reacts before the brain to certain images. And so
Wow.
like
The
It's
heart.
just
Whoa. Sorry, can we? This is overload. Even this alone, I'm feeling calmer and more centered. And I have like a 2-year-old, my son who's 2, and like yesterday he was just running all over the place. Not on the road, but like running on the sidewalk and like going on people's lawns. And there was an instinct. There was this like, I was thinking like at some point I have to step in, or maybe I should yell, or maybe I should say something. And then we went to or the other day went to the park, and he's just running freely in the field. And I was like, okay, I have to do this. I think I have to do this next week, and I have to worry about this, and we have to pack. I have to clean up this, and then I sort of just was copying him because he was bringing me out of my sitting in front of a computer all day mentality. And then when I asked a few people, they're like, no, this is great. This is a great opportunity. This will reduce spending time with your family, as you've echoed, and being, different generations. 42-year-old guy with gray beard and 2-year-old running wildly in the park and pooping his diaper. This is a beautiful moment, and it's simple, and not needing to spend $100 at some some arcade or some play place or this. Just that's what you're all about. Returning to nature and simplicity and simplicity and peace of mind, and we can. It's so interesting. I was even just or tangential of this. A gym is a funny construct. A gym is a place you go to exercise. The whole world is a place of exercise. So I was like, how come? Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, treadmill. Okay, wait, why can't you just like go? Okay, maybe it's freezing half the year in Toronto, but for like people in like Los Angeles or like, I don't know, Kenya, I don't think they need gyms. They can just go to the walk. Interesting. We covered so much interesting topics. Was there anything we left out in the last couple minutes we have? We'll have to do this again, of course, but
yeah.
also. Did we miss anything? A final thought for the last 2 minutes.
um. Hmm. I mean, I guess the final thing I just want to say is when people say, how is something like the alphabet so potentially impactful? It's just the alphabet, and it's just these letters. I said, well, once upon a time, not too long ago, there were doctors performing deliveries of babies, and the mothers would frequently die mysteriously soon afterward, and they didn't know why. And a man named Ignaz Semmelweis started looking at why are the mothers avoiding going to hospital for baby deliveries and preferring to go to midwives. And they were having better results and fewer maternal deaths. And he realized that the doctors were performing autopsies and then delivering babies. And this was before Pasteur and any concept of germ theory or bacteria. But Ignaz Semmelweis, who is an Austrian, he realized that if they would just wash their hands, now he had something very caustic. He said if they would just wash their hands, the mothers would stop dying. Whatever it was that was causing it, the mothers would stop dying. And he was ridiculed. They ignored him. He ended up being put in an insane asylum. And some say he was beaten by the guards and died that way. And 30 years later, James Lister, a Scottish physician, and this is now Pasteur has been around. And so he may or may not have known about Semmelweis, but he started to understand that there was something to hand washing as well. And so then it was accepted, and and then started to be implemented. But it was more than 30 years after Ignaz Semmelweis provided irrefutable proof of the benefits of washing hands that it finally began to be instituted. Now you can imagine the doctors of the age were insulted that they were told they were unclean.
Oh,
And
it had huge psychological
if they're
transformative effects, of course.
and if something simple as washing your hands could have saved all of these mothers, what does that do to their sense of, like, oh my gosh, like if I had known this. But again, it's very hard for humans to kind of process things that really show that they've done damage.
To unlearn, to accept, to unlearn means to accept that I may not have the
right?
shame, the shame mixed with the honor. It's very, that's such a human thing. That's such an innate human thing where you have to admit. It's hard for everyone is to ever admit that you're ever wrong. It takes tremendous self-awareness, and especially if in the face of death and the honor of being the doctor of the time. Wow. So interesting.
So we're looking at the same thing with the way we teach the alphabet. I want people to recognize that, and I want embodied, complete sensory integration and ownership of the alphabet to become known to be as essential for brain development and human development, full human development, as hand washing is for good health.
Amazing. Okay, we will pause here, everyone. There's a lot more there will be future episodes. Hang in there. Thank you, Diane, for joining us, and we will pause over here.